Aaron, you're looking at the headline news of the day, right?
Yeah,
There's this
really interesting.
a new Chinese AI competitor. Probably not
There's
really new, but just new to
there,
our ears.
Yeah.
I mean, to an extent, everything's new in that space, but
Mhm.
they've been around. They've been around for a couple of years, but really just in the last couple of weeks, they've really created a stir in the whole AI market, and this accelerated today. So there are a lot of news stories out there talking about this, but tech stocks are down today due to this Chinese startup and their AI model. Nvidia down 17%, I think actually 18%. So big news in terms of the AI industry, but also impacting stocks. Broadcom as well, Microsoft, Google down, the NASDAQ down about 3%, at least the last time that I looked. So what's going on here? I think this is really interesting. It's not one of the typical purely finance or stock related topics, but it is certainly impacting the investment industry and the stock market. So it's worth taking a look at. So this startup that we're talking about here is called DeepSeek. They recently released their newest upgraded model, and what I can say is that the AI arms race is heating up. So what is DeepSeek? Well, DeepSeek, they were established in 2023, headquartered in China, and they are rapidly emerging as a significant player in the AI space. And there are some deep implications there that I'm gonna talk about. Mostly positive in my perspective, but in terms of rapid progression, so in May of 2024, they released their DeepSeek V2 model. This was noted for its cost effectiveness compared to the other frontier models of the top companies at the time. But just recently in December, they released their V3, 670 billion parameter model. So this is a large model, but it was trained at a fraction of the cost of what we're seeing OpenAI and Anthropic and Google train their models for. So just under $6 million to train this massive model, which is really pennies compared to what the other players are paying to train theirs. So this is really a game changer in AI for many reasons. So let's just take a look at DeepSeek and kind of what it offers that a lot of these other major players aren't offering. Well, one, it is completely open source. It's under an MIT license, so anybody can download the weights, download the model. You can modify it. You can use it for your own purposes, 100% free. That's a fairly permissive license in terms of doing what you need to do with it. Of course, this is a 670 billion parameter model, so not many people are going to be able to run that on their own machine. But it also provides user-friendly access. So in addition to being able to access the open source model, you can also access it through a UI chatbot similar to ChatGPT or an API, which will allow developers to access the model hosted for them, pay a fee for that, and then integrate it into their applications. It's an extremely cost-effective solution. So this is really, in many ways, where it's groundbreaking, cost-effective to train, but also cost-effective to purchase access to as a developer as well. And in spite of this, the performance is quite high, so comparable with the top frontier models right now of the day. So I'm just going to do a little model comparison here, and I'm going to compare DeepSeek's R1 model to OpenAI's O1, which is essentially considered the frontier model, the top model right now. Competition in this space has just absolutely gone crazy over the last year and a half. OpenAI for the first couple of years really had what seemed to be an insurmountable lead over everybody else, but over the last year especially, other competitors have caught up. The open source community as well has come up with models which are comparable. DeepSeek now being the top one, I believe, in that space. Meta with their Llama 3 model. But OpenAI's O1 still takes the lead in terms of the frontier model on most tasks. So this is where we're going to compare it. So this is a closed source model. It is owned by OpenAI. You cannot download it. You cannot modify it. You can fine tune it through them. And then you pay for API access, or you can access it through ChatGPT. In terms of the model size, that's unknown. It's not something that's disclosed. It's likely that it is actually consists of multiple models, which together have at least a couple trillion parameters, massive in size. And the training cost. So this is also information which is not necessarily public, but some of the estimates that I saw put it at about $6 billion. I would say probably at least that or more. Now let's compare it to DeepSeek. So this is open source. That means it's completely open. You can developers, computer scientists, AI engineers can go in, see the weight, see how the model works, download it, modify it, use it, or access it through the API. Model size, as I said, 670 billion parameters. This along with Meta's Llama 3, which I believe is 700 billion parameters, is the largest open source model. And then the training cost, 5.6 million. So comparing that training cost to what OpenAI and the other large players are paying to train their models, this really shows a transition in the industry. I mean, if somebody who this originally is I understand it, this was a side project and not funded with the original models. But if you're able to train a model for only a few $1 million that is comparable to some of these massive models, it really shows that there's not much of a moat that OpenAI or some of these other model companies have. Which may be the reason why companies like Meta also chose the open source model, because their Llama 3 is also open source. Now let's look at a model performance comparison. So again, we're comparing this to O1. There are benchmarks, testing benchmarks, which are used to evaluate and compare the different models. So one being mathematical reasoning, they were about equal on that. General knowledge, OpenAI's O1 outperformed it just slightly. And then for software engineering tasks, DeepSeek actually outperformed just slightly. So really kind of comparable performance here, which is extremely impressive given the other things that I mentioned, the open source nature and the low training cost. But let's take a look at price. So if you're a developer and you want to integrate the state of the art models into your applications, you would access the API. So all these companies offer API access, and you pay per million tokens. So a token is basically, it's almost like saying a word, a little bit different. But a million tokens would probably be about 700,000 words going through the model, input and output. So for OpenAI, the cost for input and output tokens, $15 per million input, 60 per million output. We don't need to get into the explanation of the difference, but these are the costs. Now look at DeepSeek's costs, 14 cents per million input, 28 cents per million output, a fraction of the cost to access it, which makes sense given they spent a fraction of the cost to train it. So this is pretty incredible. It's disruptive to the market, not just necessarily in terms of what DeepSeek has done, but in terms of who else is going to come out just out of the woodwork all of a sudden and produce a model which is on par or better than the top closed source models, but at a fraction of the cost. So this is very interesting. But what does it all mean for investors? Well, we've seen what it means today, and that's market volatility. So NVIDIA shares down nearly 18%. Broadcom, leading semiconductor company, experienced a decline today, 15%. Microsoft and Alphabet both down today. The NASDAQ down about 3% as of the last time I looked. So right now, it's about kind of digesting the information and understanding what it means. And often, we get these reactions. But I think that, mid to long term, what people need to realize is that more competition in this space is good. I don't want to see all of this technology concentrated into one company or even one country necessarily. So having all of this competition out there is generally a good thing to provide access. The reason why is because if you have the top model and it's capable of doing so much more than all the other models, and you control who is able to access it and use it, you essentially are in a position to pick the winners and losers. But if there's a lot of competition, people have choices. So I like that. I think it's more competition. It's more investment then that is going to come into the industry now. I'm comparing this with OpenAI's O1 model, but OpenAI is actually already in the process of launching their O3 model. So we'll see then how this is going to compare to that. But as more better models come out, other companies invest more, the open source community invests more, and every once in a while, somebody comes out of nowhere and just innovates and does something that is amazing to the market. Another thing that people are looking at here is just how this impacts the dominance of Silicon Valley, because there's a saying in the technology space or in Silicon Valley, and that's that the US innovates, China imitates, and Europe regulates with respect to technological innovation. But this is not an imitation, or at least from my understanding, this is actually a big step forward that we're seeing from a rather small company in China. That I don't think it's not like they necessarily had a huge amount of financial backing to accomplish this. So I'm sure they will have a lot of financial backing now, and it'll be interesting to see how this all turns out.
It's a little high level for myself.
Or was it too high level?
Well, no, it's not high. It's not too high level at all. No, it was good. I just don't know what to say
Summary is
about
what
it.
you're saying. Good summary of the events.
I mean,
No, it is interesting. I think
the
that
point is that, like, I've been doing a lot of, we've all been doing a lot of thinking about. We're not trend investors, but we also like to. We know that, like, in some cases, trends exist in areas that there's a lot of capital flowing into, and there's a lot of reason why innovation needs to occur. So you want to know where the trends are, and of course, the biggest trend, and nobody needs to be told that right now, is AI. But the question is, what inning are we at? I mean, are we in the later stages now, where we're basically going to start to see more of an AI winter and a downturn, or are we still in the early stages where people need to look for opportunities? That's a question we like to answer. But then, of course, you need to know the specific opportunities, because whenever you have a market where there's a lot of excitement, you are also going to get a lot of very promotional companies that arise in that area just to raise money that you don't want to invest in. So it's also about finding the difference between those.
yeah, I think thinking one of the more interesting things you talked about was for me was thinking of China as more of an innovator versus just copying. I mean, that would be a significant shift versus the U.S. Silicon Valley, which has always been at the head of innovation, and that would be a significant difference. On like the drops that you saw today. The other thing is I'm not sure if everybody wrapped their head around how impactful this development can be, if it really is. I mean, I've read articles on it potentially, that this is one model that can answer certain questions, but does it have the infrastructure? Does it continue to be able to answer those questions going forward? Is it just answering at one set point in time, and can it like learn going forward? I'm not sure. Like this is not my area, but the other thing I'd say is the drops we saw today. I think we were talking about part of it is you have companies trading at premium multiples, and sometimes the market wants to have an excuse to shave some valuation off of these names that are just trading it. I mean, we went over in the last couple of podcasts where North American markets are on a relative valuation basis historically, and we're at significantly on the highest end of valuations that you've seen in 25 years essentially. So it's not surprising to see the market jittery and have a pullback on something that maybe this is impactful, maybe it isn't. But there's companies in other sectors that really have nothing to do with this segment that I track in portfolios that dropped off 5% in this day, and this will have no impact to their business. But they were trading at premium multiples, and you see a bit of a risk off in that environment, and I think there should be some trimming of multiples. And if this is the excuse to do that, potentially maybe that's what happens over the next month, and we get some companies that we would like to buy come into some more reasonable ranges, and we get to buy them potentially. So we'll look out for that.
Yeah, and just on the size of the pullback, because you're mentioning the premium valuations, how it pushed up the market valuations last year. NVIDIA on its own represented something like 7% of the S&P 500 gains for 2024.
Yeah, crazy.
And just to give a size of the pullback for NVIDIA, it was $589 billion today. And OpenAI's total valuation for the last round of raising was $157 billion. So NVIDIA lost 4 times the valuation for OpenAI just today. Just to give a size.
I would think that the whole idea that this is going to be bad for NVIDIA, I mean, more AI and better AI means you need more powerful GPUs and infrastructure, which is you might argue that then this is an opportunity for NVIDIA. I think if OpenAI were publicly traded on the stock market, they'd be down 30% today, to be honest. And then they would probably recover maybe after they release their O3. But yeah, I just think that it looks like the competition, if anything, and the technology is just heating up and accelerating.
And
Yeah.
I guess the results, I guess it's open source, so everything's been peer reviewed that's come out of here. Like, we know that this is actually what happened. I'm not that I'm saying anything, but it's come out of China, and there have been in the past things that are not, they're framed in a positive light that actually aren't as impressive.
Yeah, so
After the fact.
that's a good point. And yeah, so because it's open source, you should be able to, like,
You
people
should,
at this
right?
point have
Yeah.
taken it and tested it themselves, and it should be. But I mean, I haven't done that myself, and I haven't
Yeah.
gone through and researched all the results of that. I'm really just reporting what's happening out there.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, it's definitely,
I mean, it is open source. It should be testable. So, I mean, we'll find out probably
again,
over the next
not
week if
everybody
this.
can test a
Yeah.
670 billion parameter model, but
Yeah.
some people can, and
Most
organizations
people.
can. So,
Brennan tests it in his sleep.
yeah,
Let's be
on
honest.
his laptop.
So,
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
that's
all the
what I mean.
time. I was also going to just say that, power companies were also down. Just like CNBC here. Here's an article. Power companies that are most exposed to the tech sector's data center boom plunged Monday, which is today, as the debut of China's DeepSeek open source AI laboratory led investors to question how much energy artificial intelligence applications will actually consume. Vistra was down 30% today. Constellation, Talon Energy, GE, Vernova, all down 20%. So again, it's just kind of,
See, no,
put it.
I think that this doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And I mean, I'm not going to say that that's opening up a buying opportunity, because again, as Ryan said, a lot of these companies really had to come down anyways.
Yeah.
A couple of those names I think were already highly valued. So maybe now they're at a point where it's fair value or closer to. But again, it's the need for power and data centers doesn't go down because you get superior models. I mean, you could say, well, you could do the same with less computation, but you're not. You're going to just do more with the bigger models. So it's yeah.